So I recently hit a new milestone on my channel and managed to get over 2,000 subscribers. And just like to thank you all so much for actually wanting to hear what I have to say. It really means a lot. So to celebrate, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Now, a few weeks ago, I appeared on Dumping with Scrump on Short Fat Otaku's channel, and one of the things we ended up talking about is quite a strange book. The book's called Girl Sex 101. It advertises itself as the perfect guide for women who want to have sex with women and want to understand how to do it. Now, such a book I can see would have a real value to some people. Maybe they're intimidated by having their first lesbian experience. Maybe they need to have a little bit more understanding. But unfortunately, we live in current year and things are never that straightforward. So let's take a look into exactly what Girl Sex 101 is all about. Well, only a few pages in, you come across a glossary of the various kinds of words that they'll be using throughout the book. Now, this being a book about lesbian sex, one would be thinking these would all be phrases around maybe vaginas, lesbianism, bisexuality. But the list starts off with AFAB and AMAB, which is a very specific phrase relating to trans people. In fact, most of the glossary is aimed at trans people. Bottom surgery, gender essentialism, girl dick, non-op or post-op, penis in vagina, penis in ass, or penis in vagina or ass, penetrative sex, trans clit, top surgery, or user upgraded. But don't worry, there are still a few phrases that might be helpful to lesbians or bisexual women, like lesbian. You might need to know what that is. Or cis. You got to remember that you're cis. Or how about vulva owners? Because that's what you are. Or maybe you just want to refer to your genitals as factory installed. You know, whatever works for you. So that intro in itself is kind of a bit strange, and a lot of the book is as well. The book itself is almost 400 pages long. And there's simply too much to go over in one video. Just to kind of point out some of the craziness, there are pages dedicated to asexuality in a sexuality book. There is a wonderful inspirational quote on someone coming out as a multiracial, queer, kinky, poly, high femme who, believe it or not, easily passes for a straight, white, mainstream married woman. And she says that she bends the boundaries and alters the perceptions of what it means to be queer, kinky, poly, or a POC that are held dear by people in the mainstream. Although the book itself does have a few problematic moments. In fact, a quick skim would actually point out a lot of white power symbols. No one tell Blizzard. So I think it's time we actually got a look at some women's bodies. So let's see what they have in store for us. Well, that's it. First of all, we start off fairly okay with what we could probably just describe as a young butch lesbian. Moving on straight away to a trans woman, quite a tall trans woman. Velma from Scooby-Doo, a super mutant from Fallout, a hobbit, a slightly bigger hobbit with a penis, a dog, a bald goatee-having pregnant woman in a wheelchair, Jeff, a nerd, someone showing their ass, someone with rickets, a middle-aged bald man with a hook for a leg, a grizzled sea captain with a vagina, an old woman. She doesn't fit in with the rest of these. Away with you. And the middle-aged woman, really going off course here. Oh, thank God, they corrected, they remembered to put in Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, and they've ended it with another trans woman. So, yeah, in this book of Girl Sex 101, how many penises do you see on this page? I mean, not counting the dog or the person showing their ass, because we don't know their genitals, and quite frankly, I don't want to. Yeah, there's a surprisingly high amount of dick in a book aimed at women. But not to worry, straight away we go into an actual guide about vaginas. Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. This is a book about women having sex with women after all. But make sure that you completely understand all of this. It's really important because now we're about to take a tour of penises. What do penises actually have to do with girl sex? A lot, actually. First, penises and vulvas are analogues, and like I said before, it can be useful to understand how they both work. If you want to be a good driver after all, it's helpful to at least have an understanding of how to drive both automatic and manual transmissions, even if you have a strong preference for one of the two. Third, a lot of girls have penises. Yep, it's true. Loads. Trans women, genderqueers and intersex folks all might have penises. You don't have to like penises, but I suggest keeping an open mind and learning about this stuff anyway. Bodies are cool, and so are people. They give us a nice big picture of the balls there. They explain what a phallus is. We also get quite a handy guide for words that trans women might use for their bits, including clit, queen-sized clit, girl cock, hen, because it's not a cock, twat rod, joystick, entertainment centre, strapless, penis, the business, or nub. Now we've got a good understanding of penises from our girl sex guide, let's see what we could actually do with them. So the first guide it gives out is for muffing, which is essentially fingering someone's balls. What a very feminine thing to do. We also have the reverse Vulcan, where her shaft is in the crux between your middle and ring fingers, but only to do this if she doesn't get fully erect. There's also softballing, where you kind of grab the balls and fold it over the dick. That sounds like fun. Oh, there's the bike seat, where you seem to touch the gooch area and just kind of grab it. Oh, and you can just touch her balls. But a particularly handy guide is if your partner is okay with her clit being touched like a penis, just go for it. Just be sure to get her assent first. Penises tend to like a grip around the shaft, whether firm or gentle, and gentle pulling up and down of the skin across the erectile tissue. So just a guide to jacking people off. It isn't just trans women who get a part of this guide as well. In fact, we end up having a trans guy, the grizzled sea captain from earlier, being mentioned. Which is kind of strange because they insist that if they're going to insist that trans men are men, why are they including a trans man in a girl sex guide for girls? But don't worry, we have further sex tips from Toby and Toby's transmission. I've seen situations where folks have gotten into trouble assuming that if a woman has similar looking genitals as a cis guy, then she must want to use them in the same way a cis guy does. It can be a touchy subject, which is technically true, but it's still kind of funny to see it in a book for girl sex. Well, what about performing cunnilingus on a trans woman? After all, a pre-op trans woman isn't going to have a vagina, so how are you going to do this? Well, thankfully they have a guide for that as well. The Girl Dick Bean Lick. For post-op trans women, the basics of cunnilingus are the same, except there's not much internal clitoral structure. But for non-op trans women, we use what you've learned about analogous genital structures to map what we talked about onto the trans clit. This means you might want to focus a lot of your attention on the glans and frenulum. But thankfully it does also point out that you can also perform cunnilingus in a way that might look like a blowjob. You can also grab the whole thing and call it a genital bouquet. What's probably the strangest sexual position in the whole book is known as the Flying Squirrel. To make the Flying Squirrel, gently grip the skin of her scrotum and pull it over the top of her clit. The skin will stretch out and look glossy. You can then put your mouth right into the middle, pressing down against her clit through her scrotum. Then you can lick, nibble and eat her out like whoa. So the guide is effectively saying just pull the balls over the dick and suck. That's something I never thought I would see in a guide for lesbian sex. And of course, such a book wouldn't be complete without an essay on transphobia within the queer community. Because there always seems to be hidden prejudice within these leftist communities somehow that the rest of us who just get along with our lives never really seem to think about. Cis women may be encouraged to hide or reject attractions they have to trans women for fear of how others would respond want if they acted on them. And at the same time, a lot of trans women get the message that they are undateable. Well, yeah, but some are. Well, something surprising that the book says is that you are allowed to have preferences, and you're encouraged to have preferences, and your preferences don't have to be PC. Wow, it's almost like they finally recognise that people do indeed have their own attractions, but you do need to know that your preferences are not immune to critique. So you can fancy whoever you want, but you're gonna be judged for it. They deserve the right to judge you, and judge you they will, especially for genitals. You can prefer people who are packing one set of goods, but remember, genitals do not equal gender, and if you only like people with vulvas, remember that some trans women and trans guys have vulvas. If you say you only like people with vulvas as a way of weeding men or trans women out of your dating pool, you're not doing a very good job of it, and you may be acting shady at the same time, because you wouldn't want to be excluding any of them sexy trans women's, would you? You should be willing to examine your preferences. We make a lot of assumptions, it's how we survive. But when it comes to dating and sex, we often let these assumptions run the show. We might let one bad experience make that mean something about a whole type of person. And even if your preferences aren't rooted in pain, it's worth deconstructing them. So after giving you a spiel on how it's okay to like whoever you want, it turns out probably isn't, because it's probably going to be racism, ageism, classism, ableism. So Girl Sex 101 is not a book that's ever going to have been aimed at me. I don't have any interest in having sex with women, and quite frankly I know what I like in bed, so I'm not looking for any tips, and I'm sure that a lot of people might get a little bit out of it. But there's so much penis in it! It's amazing that an actual guide for girl sex has so much dick in it. A friend of mine actually purchased the book because she wanted to know what to do if she was to have sex with a woman, and she was instantly presented with penises everywhere. What is the point? But a link is down in the description if you want to check it out for yourself and see some of the amazing artwork that they have, especially if you really want to get a hang at that flying squirrel. Maybe you've got a sexy trap with you that might want to try that out. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think. Well, thank you all for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and if you're going to try out any of the moves. If you please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. And a special thank you to Sarah, Kim, Codex and the rest of my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.